We will read from the book England, the Remnant of Judah, and the Israel of Ephraim, the two families under one head, a Hebrew episode in British history, by the Reverend F.R.A. Glover, M.A., late chaplain to the consulate at Cologne. This is from 1881. Part 1, The Signs of Judah. Chapter 1. In the system of polity of England, there are three prominent and very important matters: a material fact, an hereditary descent, and heraldic blazon. If these things exist, there is no denying them. They do exist. There is a cause for their existence. These things are all Eastern. The first is Jacob's stone. The second, the descent of the monarch enthroned on it, assumed. The third, the standard of the lion rampant, manifest. If these things came from the East, they must have been brought. Who brought them? They are all Hebraitish. The first, manifestly, as its name implies. The second, provably so. The third is the standard of the tribe of Judah. The bringer of them must, therefore, have been a Hebrew, and undoubtedly one of note and power. Viewed collectively, these things have great significance, and may have or exercise an important influence on present and future events, the which indeed must be the case, if the character, the power, and the mission of the bringer of these things from Judea be taken into account. From Judea? Where's the true Judea? Promised land? America? For it will be seen by a variety of circumstantial evidence that this bringer was no less a person, and no other than the illustrious prophet Jeremiah, okay? Yes, Jeremiah, from the Bible, Old Testament. Remember, Jeremiah was the one who was there and prophesied to King Zedekiah when he got taken over by Nebuchadnezzar and his sons got killed and all the males of Judah. Only the females survived. Yes, we're going to see Jeremiah had a big role in preserving the line of Judah in Europe. The man destined by God in his early days to foretell and to aid in the outrooting of the polity and kingdom of Judah, as he was equally in his latter days to help, to plan and to build the same elsewhere. And this can be proved not because of a certain tradition affirms that the prophet was in Ireland as the instructor of one of its greatest kings, but because the three premises admitted nobody but Jeremiah could have conveyed them thither, or bringing them have established the stone so as to accord with the terms of the tradition concerning it. The legend of the stone and the tradition is that wherever that stone might be, a scepter should be with it until it returned to the east whence it came. A tradition confirmed as to the eastern origin of the stone by the discovery now. So real quick, when they mean east, they mean coming from the promised land, what they're calling the so-called east. But remember, if you go the farthest east, you end up in America, all right? Just follow Marco Polo. So a tradition confirmed as to the eastern origin of the stone by the discovery now that its name failed, which was thought to be Irish, is Irish only inasmuch as it is adopted from the Hebrew, and as to its prophetic aspect, and not contradicted hitherto by subsequent events connected with it, although traversing a strange and checkered course for upward of 2,400 years. For the stone has still a scepter belonging to it, even that of the mightiest nation on the earth, a nation of nations, truly even so a nation of nations, and the ruler who is enthroned thereon can claim to descend from the kings of the race then and there set upon it. And who shall say that it is not to go back to that east whence it came, in honor and power, even as it emerged from it, out of a disaster and woe, that those that sowed in tears shall not have a joyful harvest? This tradition, however, it is to be especially noted, though a prophecy and a promise requiring the presence of some certain one to make it of possible performance, is without any allusion to the most important facts of the case, the identity of the individuals in whom the transaction of the setting up of this stone in Ireland originated, with two celebrated persons, intimately and officially connected with Hebrew history and the Hebrew polity. One, a prophet and priest, right? A prophet and a priest. the other a woman, a princess, all right? We're just talking about the princesses of Judah. A state of things which is only now, at this moment, 1861, being first openly exhibited to man, and which the proof being based upon material and historical data, now first drawn from the obscurity of a language which concealed them and placed them in juxtaposition. He, man, is called upon, finding out and searching into the reason of things, being as they were and are, to consider with relation to their practical bearing on present and future events. Why? Since they establish as an historical fact that England is the remnant of Judah. For if this case can be proved, then does this strange reality stand out upon the canvas of modern history, namely that England is the possessor of the throne of David, and its representative, and the continuator of the scepter of Judah, of which the patriarch Jacob foretold continuance until the coming of Shiloh, and that, coupled with all this, the standard of Judah is not only the ensign which this power will have sooner or later to unfurl as the ensign to the nation, and to which the dispersed of Judah will have to rally, but that her own Scottish blazon is, as that standard of Judah, the mark, outward and visible, by which connection is established between the dislodged royalty of Jerusalem and the rehabilitated Judah of the West, and that she, England, is therefore under this triple manifestation of Hebraical identity, the true and provable and legal representative and entity of the remnant of Judah. That remnant, including king's daughters, which was warned to escape from Egypt in company with the prophet Jeremiah and promised protection if it did, okay? From Egypt, ancient Tamari, America. That remnant, making Judea its way to sanctuary, became under the conduct of the prophet, whose duty it was to provide for such a restoration of the royal house, wherever he might in the providence of God be directed to go, and that he went to Ireland, we are able to prove. All right, we got a little bit of this in my day and night videos, remember? Okay, with the Tuatha De Danann, he was held by the Tuatha De Danann. They made a marriage, okay, with somebody. We're gonna go over all this again. So they went to Ireland, right? Jeremiah and the king's daughters, the legal representative of the house of David, of the polity of Judah, and of the interim state of entire Israel. This, however, will seem to many a relation so strange as that no man should be called upon to give it credence without proof, all right? They're gonna be like, Kurimeo, you're just talking about Bible stories. This is pseudo, Kurimeo. You're making things up. All right, well, we'll see the history of what people have written down and said already. When we're talking about people from these times. The first point to establish will be the office of the prophet Jeremiah in the matter, he being the substratum or foundation upon which the whole edifice is made to rest. And this is again chapter 2, and he's going in about Jeremiah, the prophet to the nations, to build and to plant, where such an important part is attributed to the prophet Jeremiah as the rehabilitation of an embryo kingdom of Judah and Ireland, an event involving immense consequences. It would be natural to expect that some footmarks would be left by the way by which the steps of this great man might be tracked. Such unmistakable footmarks, if to be found, might be more reliable as evidence of his presence than any chronology of the times might afford, even if such existed, seeing that they would be beyond suspicion of fabrication. Accordingly, there are both personal and official, as well as legal marks of the prophet's presence in Ireland at the proper time, independent of the priestly one of blessing the stone in inauguration of the new dynasty destined to perpetuate and redeem the forfeited promise to the line of David and to secure the continuance of the scepter of Judah. Such marks are discoverable in the various points as regards Jeremiah below enumerated. Number 1, Olam Fola, the reputed king, sage, and legislator, and the College of Olams, which he founded at Tara. Number 2, Inez Fail, the Isle of Destiny. 3, Jadhan Moran, the righteous judge. 4. Lie of Fail, the stone of destiny. 5. The material fact. 6. Tara, the name of the royal settlement of Ireland. 7. The law of slavery, the 7 years law of the Hebrews. All right, we just got about Tara right in the other book. 8. The Irish mystery not to be uttered. 9. The Scottish-Irish law of descents. 10. The genealogy. 11. The lion rampant of Scotland, the heraldic blazon. 12. The Hebraical etymological coincidences at Tara. 13. Mur Olamin, the college of prophets. England, the remnant of Judah, and the Israel of Ephraim, the two families under one head, a Hebrew episode in British history by the Reverend F.R.A. Glover, M.A., late chaplain to the consulate at Cologne. And we continue in the book in chapter 3, where we left off. It says here, Olam Fola of Tara. Remember, Olam Fola, they're saying is Jeremiah. We got that already in many references, and they're saying the same thing in this book. So let's see what they're saying about Olam Fola of Tara in this book. It says Olam Fola is celebrated in ancient history as a sage and legislator, eminent for learning, wisdom, and excellent institutions, and his historic fame has been recognized by placing his medallion in basso relievo with those of Moses and other great legislators on the interior of the dome of the Four Courts in Dublin. Annals of the Four Masters, page 297. The ancient records and chronicles of the kingdom were ordered to be written and carefully preserved at Tara by Olaf Fola, and these formed the basis of the ancient history of Ireland called the Psalter of Tara. And again, that's from the Annals of the Four Masters, page 297. This is real history, Olam Fola, Jeremiah, Olam Fola, pronounced Olaf Fola, is a man well known of thought, not accurately known in Irish tradition as a great monarch, sage, and lawgiver. He is mentioned thus in the Annals of the Four Masters, page 412, amongst the most celebrated kings of Ulster. Remember Ulster, where Jeremiah first landed, the Ulster plantation? Who also reigned as monarchs of Ireland was Olam Fola, or Olaf Fola, the famous legislator whose reign is placed by Tigernach O'Flaherty and others about 7 centuries before the Christian era. He founded the conventions of Tara. This is that Eokide, Olam Fola Heremon, Ardgrith of Tara, of whom the chronicles of Erie make such an ample and honorable mention. Their kings had many names and titles. These titles have been branched out into persons and inserted in the list of real monarchs, by which means the chronology of Egypt has been greatly embarrassed. So as Brian said of Egyptian history and chronology may be said of Irish, as Mr. Moore well suggests, Moore's Ireland, page 161. This case, however, affords an example of the converse evil, a compound in which mere titles have been converted into a man and 2 persons thrown into one. Olaf Fola is no king at all, is not the name of a king, nor of any individual. It is, if we are to judge of his true position by the circumstantial evidence that the case affords the title of an official, we have to prove that his office was made and filled by the prophet Jeremiah as Ard Olam. The Olaf Fola of Irish history was the chief and first and founder of the order of Olams in Ireland. This was an order not of kings, but of priests or sages, druids so-called, more properly Draoi. As General Valency insists, they were not pagans, they were simply deistical teachers. This Olaf Fola founded also a college of Olams at Tara, or as the Hebrews would say, a school of the prophets, but not a college of kings. Whoever heard of an order of kings or a college of kings? Therefore, this Olam Fola is not in his presumed name a king by reason of this word Olam. The word Olam has a meaning. It is a Hebrew word, all right? It is a Hebrew word. It has to do with any period of time short of eternity, or of eternity, a natural word to apply to the office of a man whose business it was to teach men to look to him, who keeps the times and seasons in his own hand, and who incarnate should, according to the Hebrew scriptures, at some certain time appear in the east as the manifested Jin Naomta. As kingship, therefore, is evidently not in the word Olam, we must seek for it in the other portion of this official's name, that is, in the word Fola. Now, this word this illustrious official had in common with a certain Eastern princess, married, as was said, to the king of the country. All right, here goes the story again, guys. She is one of the many queens after whom Ireland has been said to be named. Inis Fodla, Inis Fola. The letters DH introduced into the word were a subsequent invention. When language came to be written and men had to find out reasons for what they did not know, they changed the fola of conversation into some other word, the meaning of which they did not know, by the arbitrary incorporation of unsounding consonants, a process by which the word fola, which was inapplicable as Irish, became invested with a meaning which they thought would fit the circumstances of the case. But if the island was named Fodla at all, or Fola, in pronunciation, why not after the alleged king, who was a wonderfully learned man and a great man instead of after a woman? For the greatness of this Olam Fola, which it is impossible to treat as a fiction, has come down to us as an undeniable reality. It's not fiction, okay? It's reality, notwithstanding a halo of the impossible which surrounds the demigod. So much is this the case that notwithstanding his alleged doubtful existence, he is endomed at this day in the grand hall of the Four Courts in Dublin. All right, Jeremiah is there with Moses and other magnates of ancient celebrity. The doubtful, in the case in his imaginary kingship, which intruding unnaturally into the legends concerning the man, has by mingling truth with fiction thrown a cloud of doubt over the whole. The Olam Fola is a reality, and a grand reality, but not that of a king. He was a prophet and a Hebrew, all right, just like Jeremiah, as the words and their significant meaning declare to us. And what Hebrew prophet of note was living at that time assigned as the era of this Olam Fola, but Jeremiah, the man who was appointed prophet to the Gentiles and the restorer of the eradicated kingdom of Judah. All right, remember? With the female line, right? He was and was adrift at that time, and the place of his death and burial being unknown. For his tomb is shown as four places: Tuphnis, Jerusalem, Alexandria, and Babylon, and the legends of his death being in terms that carry their own confutation. He may as well have lived and died in Ireland as in any other country. He had, as we shall see, a great business to do somewhere, and he was under the protection as before he had been, doubtless under the guidance of Almighty Allah to do it. He had to plan and build a kingdom. With respect to the reason as to why Olam Fola might have been concluded to be a king when he was none other than a prophet, it is easy to suppose that the conductor and guardian of the king's daughters would, as guardian of these high destined women, be held by the vulgar and by the bards also in course of time as himself a king. The character also which he had, the position he filled, and the relation in which he stood toward them, and Hawa, and whose name he spoke and whom he represented, would necessarily inspire that admiration and profound respect for the man which the kings who knew him readily according him would by the same vulgar be interpreted into kingship over them. Continue a little further in chapter 3. It says here, I have, however, no desire to encumber my hypothesis with any argument as to whether the Olam Fodla of Irish tradition is or is not a mistake for Jeremiah the prophet. I feel that the case of the presence of the illustrious seer in Ireland is made out on other grounds, that indeed he must have been the transporter of the stone, the conductor of the king's daughters, and the planter of the standard of Judah in Ireland. I was satisfied of this long before I heard even of the existence of this Olam Fola, or a word of the legend of his having been instructor to the warrior king Finn MacCoil. Again, warrior king. But one, as the existing history of Olam Fola is inconsistent with itself. Two, as his kinship is evidently a fiction, while the facts of his reality and his wisdom cannot be denied. And as three, moreover, the chronology of the real individual is brought down to accord with the times of the prophet. And as four, his acts are exactly those that the prophet's acts would have been, had he had the power to do as he would have felt it to be his duty to do. in establishing an order of learned men to carry on the knowledge of that law, the Torah, right? Torah. You guys see where they got Tara? That plantation of Tara, that city with Jeremiah or Olam Fola. Tara is Torah, the law, so-called Old Testament. It's not old. Who says it was old? And who told you we needed a new one? Which he certainly would have brought with him and left with them, all right? He brought the Torah with him. With the office of Jodhan Moran, of which 5, he was evidently the intruder. I submit, 1, that the Eokite Olam Fola Herimon Ardri of fiction is when reduced to its proper elements the description of 2 officials instead of 1 person, and no fiction. So now what he means, remember that it's Olam Fola, that's Jeremiah, and then Eokoid Herimon is the king that married Tefi. So it is 2 different people. They kind of grouped as one into mythology, right? Legend. 2, that the Olam Fola, when divested of the royalty which belongs to the first and the last 2 words of this pretentious name, and of the Pentarchati expressed by the last, is the Jeremiah of reality. That the first and 2 last words belong to the king Eokide, contemporary with him, the king Pentarch, who married a princess from the east at the time of the prophet's arrival in Ireland. 4, that the word Eokide as prefix to the words Olam Fola is an adjective characteristic of respect, such as we are accustomed to use towards the ancient chronicler, the venerable Bedi. And 5, and lastly, that in the capacity and character thus assigned to him as the prophet restorer of the monarchy of Judah, the Olam Fola of Tara, chronicler, sage, and lawgiver, divested of both pentarchy and royalty, is more worthy of the exaltation given him in the dome of the 4 courts in the Irish capital than any other would be, though entitled to the dignity of all the adjuncts through which Olam Fola has been presented to the world, since the true knowledge of the real man became lost to the generations which succeeded him. Okay? Meaning, you didn't even know that was Jeremiah, the real man. It became lost. His name became lost, became a legend. Jeremiah. Says here, postscript 1880. It is very satisfactory to find out that the condition of things which was asserted to be necessary for the identifying Olam Fola with the great prophet of the nations of the Hebrew scriptures has been most completely shown to be the real state of the case, upon the unexceptionable authority of the learned editor of Lynch's Cambrensis Eversus, Dr. Kelly, professor of history of the Royal College of Maynooth. He informs us, touching the disputed dates used in connection with this illustrious individual, Olam Fola, that the time of his existence had, by the balance of deduction of the most learned and dispassionate of their scholars, been reluctantly admitted to be brought as near to the time of the prophet Jeremiah, without mention of his name, nor any thought of the existence of the individual, as if they had been working to bring out such result. Again, Olam the learned Hebrew carried his Hebrew title with him amongst the foreigners, receives the intelligible vernacular adjunct in Celtic of a revealer. Here we have the great Olam, the art Olam declared to the natives as the learned Hebrew revealer, that is, the Hebrew prophet. So then, we have here revealed in a pagan country a learned Hebrew prophet whose time corresponds with that of the prophet Jeremiah, who was needed in Ireland to do what has been done in a Hebrew religious sense in the furtherance of essential work, the work and verification of which is to this day extant in the stone foundations of the Moor Olamin at Tara in the county of Meath, the royal precinct of Ireland, of the chief king of the Irish Pentarchy, at the time corresponding to the destruction of the kingdom of Judah by the king of Babylon. All right? Letting you know it all matches up. When Zedekiah was murdered by Nebuchadnezzar, so-called king of Babylon, Chaldean, right? And then Jeremiah had to grab the king's daughters and eventually make its way to Ireland. It all matches up. the time frame, the stories, everything. England, the remnant of Judah, and the Israel of Ephraim, the two families under one head, a Hebrew episode in British history by the Reverend F.R.A. Glover, late chaplain to the consulate at Cologne. Says here, chapter 6, from 1860, Eliaphel, the Stone of Destiny. Next, with respect to the Stone of Destiny, it is in the legend itself attached to it that we have the highest evidence of a priestly presence in the inaugurator of the stone, and herein of the official and providential inauguration of the seed of David on the throne of Israel to wield the scepter under the standard of Judah, according to the intimation on the last words of the 10th verse of the first chapter of the book of Jeremiah, for he had to build and to plant a kingdom. In his essays on certain monuments of antiquity, Mr. Weaver says, page 118, it appears that the Irish kings, from very ancient times until AD 513, were crowned upon a particular sacred stone called Eliaphel, the Stone of Destiny. That so also were the Scottish kings until the year 1296, when Edward I of England brought it here. And it is a curious fact that this stone has not only remained in England until now, and is existent still under the coronation chair of our British sovereigns in Westminster Abbey, but that all our kings from James I have been crowned in that chair. This being a fact so curious, says Mr. Weaver, we shall quote its particulars in a note as taken from Toland in his History of the Druids, page 137 to 139, and from Mr. Edward O'Reilly, author of the Irish Dictionary, in his letter to Sir William Betham, and inserted in his Irish Antiquarian Researches. Toland's statement is this: the fatal stone, Eliaphel, so called, was the stone on which the supreme kings of Ireland used to be inaugurated in times of heathenism on the hill of Tara. Remember, that's Torah. It was superstitiously sent to confirm the Irish colony in the north of Great Britain, where it continued as the coronation seat of the Scottish kings ever since Christianity, till in the year 1300, Edward I of England brought it from Scone, placing it under the coronation chair at Westminster, and there it still continues. I had almost forgot to tell you that it is now called by the vulgar Jacob's Stone, as if this had been Jacob's pillow at Bethel. So far, Toland. Now we extract O'Reilly's account. Speaking of Eliaphel, he says, all our Irish historical writers, ancient and modern, tell us that it was a large stone of extraordinary virtue brought into Ireland, that the monarchs of Ireland from 2764 to AD 513 were all inaugurated on the Eliaphel, which until that period was kept at Tara and Meath, the chief seat of the Irish monarchs. At this last mentioned period, Muirchertach, or Murchatach, reigned, Fergus, his brother, having established for himself a kingdom in Alba, or as it has been since called, Scotland, procured from his brother the Eliaphel, that on it he might with the greater solemnity be inaugurated king over his new possession. The stone was never returned to Ireland, but remained in Scotland, and each succeeding king of Scotland was crowned thereon until Edward I of England invaded that country, AD 1296, and carried off into his own country the Scottish regalia, among which was the Eliaphel. From that period to the present day, it has remained in England, and ever since the reign of James I has continued to serve the purpose for which it was so long used in Ireland and Scotland. The kings of England, from his time down to the present sovereign, having been crowned on it. With respect to the stone, we have seen that the date assigned for the presence of Eliaphel in Ireland, advent of the Ola Bola, is circa BC 586. Jerusalem was destroyed, and the great fact of the captivity took place BC 588. Continuing a little further down in the chapter, says about the year 588 BC, Jerusalem was taken by Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and so considerable a portion of the people was carried away that after the raid made upon the remnant left behind by Ishmael the son of Netaniah, remember we read this earlier, and the subsequent migration of the remains of the remnant to Egypt, the place was almost entirely deserted. On the departure of the main body for Babylon, The prophet Jeremiah was allowed the option by the monarch to go to Babylon or to remain behind. For reasons best known to himself, he decided to remain at Jerusalem, example at Mizpah. And he made use of this license to secure those invaluable endowments of the first temple, which if lost could never be replaced. Accordingly, we read in 2 Maccabees 2:4-7, it was also contained in the same writing, that the prophet being warned of God commanded the tabernacle and the ark to go with him, as he went forth into the mountain where Moses climbed up, and saw the heritage of God. And when Jeremy came thither, he found a hollow cave, wherein he laid the tabernacle, and the ark, and the altar of incense. And so stopped the door, and some of those that followed him came to mark the way, but they could not find it, which when Jeremy perceived, he blamed them, saying, As for that place, it shall be unknown until the time that Hawa gather his people again together, and receive them unto mercy. At this time, Jacob's pillow was an object of hardly less veneration in Jerusalem than the miraculous furniture in the temple. And as we find that in the subsequent capture of Jerusalem by the Caliph Omar, and his veneration for the rock shown to him by the patriarch as Jacob's pillow, he immediately gave orders for a mosque to be built over it in honor of it, which we know to have been a fictitious pillow. We believe in, we have the true one. We have herein pointed out to us, with sufficient certainty, the place where the anti-captivity Jews had set up this national stone, the sacred memento of the promises of national greatness made to their father Jacob when he dreamed his dream at Bethel, and to which memento they had assigned the name of Eben Satyet. A little further ahead is, in proportion as was the reverence of the nation for this stone as a national emblem, one representing the destiny of the nation, so might a man who had the intention and felt the duty weighing upon him to reestablish the scepter of Judah towards the reunion of the two families, remember Pharez and Sarah, of Israel, very well feel the necessity of being accompanied by such a national monument. And as his determination was to make flight by sea, for the hypothesis is that he came to an island, to some distant land where there would be no hindrance to his carrying with him that which would be a heavy burden by land. The stone being found at Tara in Ireland, and at the time that it was bound, as it were, to disappear from Judea, and the legend attached to it being what we know it to be, none but Jeremiah could have been the declarer of such a legend and prophecy. There is no doubt but that as well in Scotland as in Ireland and even later in England, this stone has been held superstitiously. Superstitiously was the word used, the reader is requested to observe, to be the palladium of the empire. It was further said there was no necessity that it should be the identical stone on which the patriarch slept. It is the legend attached to this stone with its Hebrew name that identifies it with Hebrew life and constitutes its value, whether it be the real stone or a consecrated substitute, commemorative of what may have been destroyed by the flames which consumed the temple. Leah fell, the coronation stone of the United Kingdom, is called the Stone of Destiny, for it was destined for it that whosoever it should be placed, a prince of the Scots race, should possess the sovereignty of the country, whence the prophetic rune has attached itself to it from some 2400 years since to this effect. Of the Irish Celtic, the literal translation runs thus. The exact date of the composition of this Irish Celtic rune is unknown. The story of the stone and the belief which gave rise to the distich must have preceded it. The historical fact may have been any time before the record was rhymed into perpetuity. The wondrous race, a noble tribe, unless prophets false predict, when they may find the stone of fate, empire there, they've the right to assume. This stone is called by the Irish and by the Scotch indifferently Leah fell, the stone of destiny, but chiefly by the English Jacob's pillow. It owes its two former names to the circumstance of its being that which the last given name declares it, and as Jacob's pillow, it is also Jacob's pillar and pillar of witness. The popular Irish account given to this stone is, I believe, fairly stated by Keaton, page 201. Thus the Scots, meaning the Irish Celts, being persuaded that this stone possessed such power, Fergus the Great, son of Eorc, having subdued the kingdom of Scotland, that is, of Scotia Minor, Ireland, that now is being then Scotia Major, and being determined to have himself proclaimed king, sent an embassy to his brother Mortog, son of Eric, requesting him to send him this stone, that he might sit upon it at the time of his inauguration, whereupon the stone was sent to him, and he received the crown of Scotland, that is, of Scotia Minor, upon it. This prince, says Keating, was the first of the Scotic race who was styled King of Scotland, for though some of the Picts prior to the coronation of Fergus were styled Kings of Scotland, yet there was not one of them so independently king as not to be under the tribute to the kings of Ireland, example Scotia Major, from time to time, and especially down from the time of Ephraim, son of Meletius, by whom the Picts were sent out of Leinster to settle in Scotland, to the reign of Fergus, as we will mention hereafter. As for the stone, they kept it for many successive ages, till at length it found its way to England, where it remains to this day, under the throne on which the King of England is usually crowned, having been forcibly taken from the Abbey of Scone by Edward I, so that the prediction respecting the stone has been verified in our present King Charles and his father James, whose descent is of the Scottish race, since they were crowned kings of England upon this stone. At any rate, faithful or foolish, the instinct of the nation has, all through these 100 generations of living men, made it felt that Jacob's stone, so esteemed having been brought into the country, was a thing worth dying for in battle before they would let it go. For when the flagitious Queen Mother of Edward III and her paramour Mortimer surrendered the regalia of Scotland according to the Treaty of Northampton in 1328, the Londoners allowed the diamonds, emeralds, pearls, and rubies, and all the bravery of the coronation gear, with no end of inestimable relics, to depart without a murmur. But the ragdoll stone, oh, no, that they would have died for, and in earnest thereof shown fight, the ermine traitors quailed before those sturdy forefathers of our gallant buffs, old and young, the 3rd and the 31st regiments of foot. They felt compelled not to dare the point. Nevertheless, the stone of Scone, on which it was the custom for the kings of Scotland to be set at their creation, the Londoners would on no account suffer to be sent away. Chronicles of Lanercost, okay? Hereby gladly also vindicating our ancestors from the slur cast upon them by the unreflecting, to show my fellow citizens, and to prove to them that this stone veritably is what the tradition concerning it alleges, is the reason that this is written, and to also show the faithful to Hawa and their country that though the intrinsic value of it not worth sixpence of the lawful coin of the realm, it is worth living for and dying for, if need be, as our people thought before us, the proof of which, when established, will open considerations and involve the adoption of measures of the gravest import to us all. Of such momentous consequence is the subject. What might be the result on the public mind and conduct if a universal conviction were to obtain that Jeremiah the prophet did certainly bring to this country through Ireland this stone? Listen, what if everybody knew this? Accompanied with a princess of the line of David. What if everybody knew this? And also that he left such a visible record of that event as would show, in time future on the discovery of this sign, that the time was come for the universal acknowledgement of the fact as precursor or runner like to the manifestation of the great consummation, to which the speaker's commentary, Israel's voice, just published to the world, points, a sign so clear, so readable, so unmistakable to Jew here and Gentile everywhere, as to be visibly seen and unmistakably read of all men, for so it is. All right, he's saying, lift your veil, see clearly.